Hello, today I will be telling you how to use Looks blocks in Scratch 3.0. Looks blocks are a great way to change how your backdrops and sprites and characters look in your animations and games. To begin, we will go down into the Look section, which is right under Motion, and here we have a lot of blocks. Now usefully, they're all grouped into what they're by. So like these are the say and think blocks, costume and backdrop blocks, etc. So let's look at the first blocks, right? The first few blocks. So here we have the say blocks and the think blocks. So the say blocks will make a small speech bubble appear next to your sprite, right? In this case, our Scratch Cat. So you can make it say whatever you want, right? So right now it's going to say hello. And there are two different blocks which you can use to do this. One of them says say hello, right? The other one says say hello for a given amount of seconds, right? So this one will make it say hello, or whatever you want it to be, infinitely, or until the program is stopped or it's told to stop saying hello by another block. So let's say hello, right? Ta-da, and stop. And let's say hello for 2 seconds. And it automatically stops after 2 seconds. And you can say whatever you want for as long as you like. Bonjour. See? And whatever you would like it to say. Right? It's kind of fun to play around with that. And there are also the think blocks. So the think blocks are almost exactly like the say blocks, except that instead of a speech bubble, they will put a thinking cloud like this, right? And once again, you can make them think whatever you want. Like this. And this is actually really useful for comics and animations, because using a few weight blocks you can actually make it theme. Like maybe there's another cat here and both of them are talking to each other, right? Like hello, how are you, right? And the next one that we have are the switch costume and switch backdrop blocks. So the switch costumes will actually let us make it so that maybe you have two walking costumes, right? So we can actually use the switch costume to costume 1, right? So the first one is costume 1, which is a default. The second one's costume 2. And we can actually use a repeat block. So let's go try that, right? A repeat block and a wait block. And if you have any trouble with any of these, you can check out my other videos, right? Wait block, maybe 0.1 seconds, and repeat it. And we can use another one of these, which costume to costume 1, and another wait block. And then repeat. See, he will now be walking, and if you add some motion blocks, it will look a bit more like he's walking, maybe change around the wait time. But this is a bit bulky, right? If you want to keep doing this without repeat block, or maybe for a small amount of time, you'd have to continuously do this. Then we can just use the next costume block. So we can just make it do the same exact thing, except with 1 or 2 for the wait blocks, right? And you'll see that it'll do the same exact thing. Now, the next costume block will actually have one disadvantage. It'll continuously go down from the top in your costumes list. So if we add another costume, like maybe let's choose one. How about here's some more cats. This one looks good. Cat flying. Right? So if I wanted to walk, right, then I wouldn't use this because all of a sudden the cat is flying, right? He looks kind of like Maria when he does this. So for that I would use the other one. But if you have like a very complex walking script, right? You have like hundreds of these costumes, then it'd be certainly quite a lot easier to put them in order and then use the next costume block. Now let's put all of these away. Go back to looks. So now we have to switch backdrop blocks. So the switch backdrop blocks are almost exactly like the switch costume blocks, except that they refer to the background back here. So if I go into our backdrops like so, then we have two backdrops. One is called backdrop 1. Let me rename this blank, and chalkboard, right? Blank and chalkboard. So if I go back to our scratch cat, then we can switch it to blank or chalkboard, right? So let's switch it to chalkboard. Personally, I think this looks kind of like a stage, but on closer inspection, you can tell that's a chalkboard. Or blank. And this can be really useful, like if you're making it so maybe the scratch cat is walking, and you want to make it seem like he's walking into another place, like maybe a park. Then you can just use a next backdrop actually, because you can just make it in order. But if you want it so that maybe it's like a switch scene in most of those movies, right? So this cat is walking, right? You use the next backdrop, and then you take this cat away, and then you show another person who's maybe flying, right? Then you would switch backdrop to maybe sky, right? So this can be used very well to tell a story in games and animations. Next we have the change size by block. Change size by will let you, of course, change size by a given amount. So if you want to make it bigger, then you use a positive value. And remember, positive value is basically any value that doesn't have a negative sign next to it, in one sense, right? So change size by 10. So this would change it by a tenth of its current size, right? It's, see, slowly getting bigger. And now we have a huge cat. And if I want to set size, then I can set size to 100%, which is its original size, like this. And if I want to make smaller from here, I can just make 10 a negative value. And now I cannot see the cat anymore. Here, yeah, I see a little speck of orange. And let's make it 100 again. And now, if I'm going to make it, say, 6 times its size, I would make it 600%, which is quite a lot. Now, it doesn't even fit anymore, right? And 1200%. And it doesn't seem to be letting me do that. That may be a bit too big, right? Now, let's make this 100% again. And this can be useful if maybe you want it to maybe... How about he's jumping, right? Maybe he's jumping down, like maybe he's jumping down a hole, right? For maybe like bungee jumping. Then you can make it so that his size slowly goes down, right? So it makes it look like he's going down. Then it slowly goes up, so it makes it seem like he's coming back up. Now the next one, which is my favorite one, is the change, and this is actually a drop down menu, change one of these things effect by a given amount. So this is a color effect, and let me just put it, that's the one back. So change color effect by it's 25 by default, because if you look at the scratch cat here, every time I click it, it'll smoothly, right? It'll smoothly change color into another one, right? Like red, orange, green, right? And if I make this a smaller scale, or even 1, then it can be slowly like it's a neon light cat, right? This is really fun to do. And let's set this back to 25. And this drop down menu has all kinds of cool options. Fisheye will make it seem kind of like a fisheye lens, and it'll basically spin your cat around, right? Let's check it out. So fisheye, like this. This is really interesting too. This is basically for like people who like there are obviously some practical uses, but like me, I like to play around with these kind of things, and it's really quite fun. And if you want to return it to its original one, just set fisheye or whatever effect to 0, like so. And the next one is called the whirl. Whirl will make it kind of like a whirlpool. So like if you have maybe a water and you want to make it a whirlpool, then you can just do this. Right? It looks kind of like a tornado now, or hurricane, yeah. And let's set back to 0. And the next one is actually quite interesting, pixelate. So if you want to make your game seem kind of old, like maybe one of those older Mario games, then you can make it so that your character, not that much. So your character, your sprite, is pixelated, right? Because those older games don't have amazing quality. So of course, depending on your sprite, it may or may not come out better. Like maybe if you have a Mario sprite, then maybe you can make it look kind of cool, right? And the next one is Mosaic. I've never really seen a practical use for Mosaic except for making art. And you'll be able to see that in just a second. So Mosaic will basically multiply your cat. See? And if I do it 100 times, then it just looks like a big square because there are thousands of tiny cats in here, right? And let me set that back to 0. Brightness will just make your cat brighter, like a light. It can also affect the color a bit, so be careful when you're doing that, because when you do this, like here, it'll make it look blue until it's so bright that you can't see it. And the last one is Ghost. Now this one is actually really fun, because if you want to make like if you look at my account, if you search up Angry Birds 7 in Scratch, then you'll be able to see one of my games. It's a circle game which uses ghost effect in order to differentiate between spawners and attackers / good people, right? So this can actually be really useful for either making it seem like ghost or making it just look cool, right? See? So he's kind of fading away. And then if you have one of those ghost sprites, then this will look really, really cool on them, because you can actually see slightly through them in one sense. So let's set this to 0. And the best thing is if I was to make this the craziest cat that you've ever seen, right? So let's just give it a bunch of different effects. Then, if I have a lot of these, I can just make it so that all of these what are called graphic effects, right, will be set to 0, like this, using this one clear graphic effects block. Ta-da! And the cat is back like nothing ever happened. The next one, you've probably used these a lot, are the show and hide blocks. The show and hide blocks are quite self-explanatory. Hide hides the cat, show shows the cat. Now the next block, in order to demonstrate that, I will need 2 other sprites. So let me get 2 surprise sprites, right? So we have a hat, scratch hat because of the S, and a, or some clouds, right? So I'm not sure you can see the clouds clearly. Let me choose something else. Okay, yeah, this person. Okay, so now we have 3 sprites. So right now the person is at the back, the hat is in the front, and the cat is even in front of the hat. So cat is all the way at the front. So if I want the cat to go all the way to the back behind all of these other sprites, then I can go to front layer, which is this block here, and use the drop down menu, back layer, and it's all the way at the back, so you can't even see it because there's so many things. And if you want to make it like maybe there's a line, right, and then people are coming off the line from like a frontal point of view, then this is actually really useful because this is probably the most practical use for it. And if you want to make it so that he goes all the way to the front layer, and he's at the front. And this one will actually make him a bit more specific. So right now he's all the way at the front, right? So say I wanted to put him behind the cat, in the middle of these 2 sprites, then I could have him go backward 1 layer. Now the cat is in front and the person is behind. So this is how to use the layer blocks here. So let's just remove these 2. And the final blocks that we'll be talking about are just some simple numerical or even just some value blocks, right? So we have 3 blocks, right? We have the costume number, right? So if you look at this, then this one would be costume number 1, as you can see here, costume number 2, and costume number 3. So maybe he would say, let's go back to the top up here, right? He would say the costume number, right? So right now, which costume number is he? He seems to be costume number 1. So he would say 1. And maybe he says the costume name, right? Which is costume 1. Costume 1, right? And similarly, he can actually say the backdrop name and the backdrop number. So just like our costumes, the backdrop, this is backdrop 1, this is backdrop 2. So if we go back to it, let's make him say the backdrop number, which is 1, and make him say maybe the backdrop name, blank. Interesting, he's saying blank. And if we go back to the bottom, right, so you can actually say his current size. So which size is he right now? 100%, right? And this can actually be really useful. Like maybe you want to make an interactive thing where you change up the size, maybe using some buttons, and then then you have to guess the size, and then he tells you the size. There are a lot of interesting things you can do with all of these blocks all by themselves. And you can actually make it so that these values are actually displayed in the top left corner simply by checking each of these boxes next to them. So size is 100, backdrop number 1, costume number 1, costume name, and backdrop name. Right, so now we have all of this useful information displayed right up here. So this is how to use the looks blocks in Scratch 3.0. I hope that you learned something, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you.